You're standing in an alleyway so narrow you can touch both walls with your arms spread. The buildings press in from every side, wooden frames, tile roofs, paper windows glowing from oil lamps inside. You can hear everything. A baby crying 2 floors up, someone arguing about money through a thin wall, the sizzle of something frying in a wok, footsteps on wooden floors above your head creaking with every step. It's late afternoon and the alley is already in shadow. Not because the sun has set, but because the buildings are tall enough to block it. 3 stories, 4 in some places. They lean slightly inward like they're trying to meet in the middle. If you look up, the strip of sky above you is barely wider than a ribbon. You're in Chang'an. The year doesn't matter as much as the number, 2 million people, maybe more. The largest city on Earth, and it's not even close. And every single one of those people is inside a grid. A perfect grid. Walls and gates and straight lines that divide the city into neat, orderly blocks called wards. 108 wards, each one surrounded by its own wall, each one locked at night. From the outside, Chang'an looks like the most organized city ever built. From inside a ward, it feels like you're living in a wooden box that someone kept subdividing until there was barely room to breathe. The question isn't whether Chang'an was powerful. It was the capital of the Tang Dynasty, the center of the largest empire on Earth. The question is, how do you fit 2 million people into a space where nothing is taller than 4 stories? You're still in the alley, but now you're moving forward because there's no room to turn around. The passage opens into a slightly wider street, still narrow by any reasonable standard, but at least 2 people can pass each other without turning sideways. The buildings here are shops on the ground floor, residences above. A man is selling steamed buns from a window cut into the wall. Another is repairing shoes on a wooden stool, tools spread out on a cloth in front of him. This is the inside of a ward. The Chang'an maybe, or the Anyafeng, it doesn't matter which. They're all built the same way. A rectangle about half a mile on each side, surrounded by a wall with 4 gates. 1 gate in the center of each side, manned by guards who close them every night at curfew. Inside, the space is subdivided into blocks, and those blocks are subdivided into lots, and those lots are crammed with buildings that house families, workshops, temples, gardens if you're wealthy, and nothing but wooden walls if you're not. The streets inside the ward are planned. Straight lines running north-south and east-west, intersecting at right angles. But the buildings aren't planned. They're organic. They've grown and expanded and been rebuilt so many times that no 2 are quite the same. Additions jut out at odd angles. Courtyards get roofed over to add another room. Alleyways turn into tunnels when someone builds over them. What surprised me is how vertical it feels. Not skyscraper vertical. Nothing in Chang'an is taller than 4 stories, and most buildings stop at 2 or 3. But in a city where every square foot of ground is claimed, the only way to grow is up. So people build up. They add floors. They squeeze in mezzanines. They stack rooms on top of workshops on top of storage cellars. The result is a city that feels taller than it actually is because you're always looking up, always aware of the weight of the floors above you. And it works. Somehow 2 million people fit inside these walls, but barely. You're walking now, heading toward one of the main streets that cuts through the ward. The alleys twist and branch, and it's easy to get lost if you do know where you're going. But then you step through the ward gate, and everything changes. You're on an imperial avenue. The street is enormous, maybe 500 feet wide, lined with drainage ditches and rows of trees. The difference is shocking. Inside the wards, you could barely extend your arms. Out here, you could fit a parade. And sometimes you do. Imperial processions, military parades, merchants moving goods in long caravans of carts and camels and porters carrying loads on their backs. This is the main North-South Avenue, Zhuge Street, and it runs straight from the Imperial Palace in the north all the way to the southern city gate, splitting Chang'an perfectly in half. East side, west side. Symmetrical, ordered. The entire city is laid out on a grid, and this is the spine. But here's the thing. The avenues are empty most of the time. Not completely. There are always people moving between wards, officials traveling on official business, merchants heading to the markets. But compared to the density inside the wards, the avenues feel vast and quiet, almost eerie, because the avenues aren't where people live. They're circulation. They're the arteries that connect the wards, and the wards are where the actual city happens. You cross the avenue and enter another ward. Immediately, the noise returns. The smell returns: cooking oil, incense, human waste, animals. The building's close in. You're back inside the machine. This ward is different, wealthier. You can tell because the buildings are set back from the street. There are courtyards, real courtyards, open to the sky, with gardens and ponds and ornamental rocks. The houses are single-story, sprawling horizontally instead of stacking vertically. Tile roofs with upturned eaves, painted wooden beams, walls that are plastered and whitewashed instead of bare wood. This is where the aristocrats live, the officials, the families connected to the imperial court. They don't need to build up because they own enough land to build out. A single aristocratic compound might take up an entire block inside the ward, space that, in a poorer ward, would house 50 families. But even here, the density is creeping in. You pass a compound where the outer wall has been subdivided. Small shops have been built against it, facing the street. The family that owns the compound is renting out space because even aristocrats need income, and there's no better income than rent in a city where space is the most valuable commodity. You keep walking. Past a Buddhist temple, its gate open, the sound of chanting drifting out. Past a Taoist shrine, smaller, quieter. Past a well where people are drawing water, filling jars, carrying them back to their homes. There are no pipes in Chang'an, no aqueducts like Rome. Water comes from wells and you carry it yourself. You're moving toward the eastern market now, the Dongxi. You can hear it before you see it. A low roar of voices, animals, movement. The market is its own ward, but it's different from the residential wards. No one lives here permanently. It's all commerce. You step through the gate and the density somehow increases. The market is a grid within a grid. Narrow lanes lined with stalls, shops, warehouses. Everything is for sale. Silk from the south, horses from the steppe, spices from Persia, glass from Rome, jade, ceramics, tea, medicinal herbs, weapons, paper, books. You can hear merchants shouting in a dozen languages: Sogdian, Arabic, Turkic, Korean. The Tang Empire is the center of the Silk Road, and this market is where the world meets. The buildings here are 2 stories, sometimes 3. Shops on the ground floor, storage or workshops above. The lanes are packed. You move with the crowd because moving against it is impossible. Someone bumps into you carrying a bolt of silk. Someone else is leading a donkey loaded with baskets. A child runs past, chasing a chicken that's escaped from somewhere. The market has its own guards, not imperial soldiers, private security hired by the merchant guilds. They're here to keep order, to settle disputes, to make sure no one steals anything too obvious. The market is regulated, prices are posted, weights are inspected. The government takes a cut of every transaction, and in return it keeps the market safe, stable, predictable. But the sheer volume of people, that's what hits you. Tens of thousands of people pass through this market every day, buying, selling, trading, negotiating. And at sunset, when the drum sounds, everyone has to leave. The market closes. The gates lock. You go back to your ward and you stay there until morning. It's late afternoon now. The light is starting to fade. You're heading back through a residential ward, this one somewhere in the eastern half of the city. The buildings here are 3 stories on average. Ground floor is shops or workshops. Second floor is living space. Third floor, if there is one, is more living space or storage. You stop at a noodle shop, just a window cut into a wall, a pot boiling inside, steam rising. The cook ladles noodles into a bowl, adds broth, hands it to you. You eat standing in the street because there's no seating, no tables. You finish, hand back the bowl, keep moving. This is how most people eat in Chang'an, fast, cheap. Street food sold from windows and stalls and carts. Noodles, dumplings, flatbreads. Grilled meat if you can afford it. Most people don't have kitchens. The buildings are too small, too flammable. Cooking happens communally, or you buy prepared food. It's efficient. It's also the only way to feed 2 million people in a city this dense. You pass a bathhouse, public. You pay a small fee, go inside, wash in a communal pool. No private baths unless you're wealthy. Everything in Chang'an is communal because there's no other option. Space is too valuable to waste on privacy. You're near the western edge of the city now, and the character of the wards is shifting again. Poorer. The buildings are older, more weathered. Some of them lean noticeably, propped up with wooden beams. The streets are narrower. The smell is worse. Less incense, more waste. This is where the laborers live. The porters, the construction workers, the servants, the people who keep the city running but don't benefit much from it. They live in subdivided rooms in buildings that were built for one family but now house 5. They work from dawn until the curfew drum, then they go home and sleep, and then they do it again. There are no courtyards here, no gardens, just buildings packed so tightly that fire is a constant threat. Chang'an burns regularly. The buildings are wood and paper and thatch. When a fire starts, it doesn't stop at one building. It takes the block, sometimes the whole ward. The city has fire brigades, organized, well-equipped, trained to respond fast. But even so, fires are part of the rhythm of the city. You rebuild, you move, you accept it. You're climbing now, heading toward the northern part of the city, where the ground rises slightly. From here, you can see the layout. The grid spreads out in every direction, wards, avenues, walls within walls. The Imperial Palace complex dominates the north, a city within the city, forbidden to almost everyone. The 2 markets, east and west, are visible by the sheer density of activity around them. And beyond the outer walls, you can see the suburbs, sprawling, unplanned, chaotic, where the people who couldn't fit inside the city have built their own version of it. Because here's the thing, 2 million people don't actually fit inside Chang'an's walls. The official city, the planned city, holds maybe 1 million, maybe less. The rest live outside, in suburbs that have grown up along the roads leading to the city gates, in villages that have been swallowed by urban sprawl, in temporary encampments that became permanent because there was nowhere else to go. The walls define the city legally, politically, but the city itself has outgrown them. It's spilled over, spread out, and the result is two cities, the planned one inside the walls and the organic one outside, and both are packed. It's evening now. The drum sounds, a deep, resonant boom that echoes across the city. Curfew, the ward gates start closing. You're inside a ward, so you're fine, but anyone caught on the avenues after curfew is breaking the law. The penalties are severe: fines, beatings, arrest if you're a repeat offender. The city doesn't sleep exactly, but it quiets. The streets inside the wards are still active. People moving between buildings, shops staying open late, taverns serving wine. But the avenues are empty, patrolled by guards. The wards become islands, isolated from each other until dawn. You're in a second-floor room now, rented, shared with 3 other people. The walls are thin. You can hear the family next door eating dinner, someone laughing, a door closing. The city is loud even at night because sound travels through wood and paper like they're not even there. You think about the density: 2 million people, a grid of wards, each one walled and gated. Buildings stacked 3-4 stories high, every floor subdivided, every room occupied. No skyscrapers, no elevators. Just human-scale buildings packed so tightly that the city feels like a single continuous structure. And it works. Somehow it works. The markets feed everyone. The wells provide water. The fire brigades keep the fires from spreading too far. The guards keep order. The wards create structure, even as the buildings inside them grow chaotic. But there's a fragility to it. If the markets closed, people would starve within days. If the wells ran dry, the city would empty. If the fire brigades failed, entire districts would burn. If the gates stayed open and the wards dissolved, the order that holds 2 million people together would collapse into chaos. It's near midnight. The city is as quiet as it gets, which isn't very quiet. You can still hear voices, footsteps, the distant sound of a dog barking. Outside your window, the alley is dark. No street lights. Just the faint glow of oil lamps from other windows, scattered and dim. You think about the fact that this city, this impossibly dense, impossibly crowded city, is the center of the world. That emperors and merchants and scholars and soldiers all converge here because this is where power is, where wealth is, where opportunity is. That people endure the noise and the smell and the lack of space because being in Chang'an means being part of something larger. But you also think about what happens when the empire weakens, when the trade routes dry up, when the markets empty, when the population starts to leave, not because they want to, but because the city can't sustain them anymore. Chang'an doesn't think about that yet. Chang'an just keeps building, keeps stacking, keeps packing more people into the same fixed space because that's what cities do when they're at their peak. And standing here, listening to 2 million people breathing and moving and living in a city that's bursting at the seams, you can't help but wonder, how much more can this hold?